Riverside.
Welcome to Dance Talk with Joanne Carey, where the dance world connects, the conversations inspire, and where we are keeping them real. I'm your host, Joanne Carey, and today I'm joined with Sonja Kostich. She's here with us from Baryshnikov Arts. She's the president and executive director. She not only has had a full career in dance as a dancer, she has had a full career in the finance end of things. And as a contemporary dancer, a modern dancer, she's had a really full career and continues to take, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the dance world by storm with her leadership. So welcome, Sonja, to Dance Talk.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for joining me. You know, I'm always delighted when I have a variety of guests who will come to speak to my listeners on Dance Talk. And I'm really delighted to talk about your executive directorship. But before we get into that, what I'd like you to do, if you would, is just give a little background about yourself, how you came to dance, how you started in dance, and what your career was like up until this point.
Sure. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and I was adopted when I was 2 years old from an orphanage to a wonderful family. And I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my mom tells me a story that when I arrived from Korea, I had a sign around my neck that said, "Seems to like music." And fortunately, both my parents were really big art lovers and supporters of the arts. And so from a very young age, they put me in dance and music and theater. And I loved it. And obviously I stuck with it. Minneapolis was a wonderful place to grow up as a child for the arts. It's very rich in the arts. I grew up at Minnesota Dance Theater with Lois Holton, who incidentally was just taken over by Lauren Post, a former ABT dancer. She just took on the role of director. So I'm very excited for that organization. I moved to New York then when I was 15 years old to study at SAB, the School for New York City Ballet. And my second year, then I auditioned for Mikhail Baryshnikov. He started a brand new school for ABT. And it was very exciting. It was a very small, unique school. There were 7 female students and 5 male students. The school lasted for 2 years. I was in it the first year, and then Misha asked me to join American Ballet Theater. So that was my first company. Misha was the artistic director. He gave me my very first professional job. So it's a nice, loop around coming back to Baryshnikov Arts and working with him. I went on to dance with San Francisco Ballet, Zurich Ballet, White Oak Dance Project, and I did quite an extensive amount of time as a freelance dancer, which back then wasn't as common. There was no internet, there were no cell phones, no social media. So to find out about companies and what was going on, you had to pack a suitcase with all your tour books and just travel around, which, of course, was very exciting and taught me a lot, and I saw a lot. So I spent about 24 years as a dancer and sort of spanned, as you mentioned, ballet, modern, contemporary. And then, I came to that inevitable time as dancers do and realized it was time to start thinking about the next phase of my career, which was very scary and something that I know all dancers face. And it took me a while to figure out what it was that I was going to do, but I took that leap and I went to school. I went to undergraduate school and I got a degree in accounting, which was a complete unknown to me at the time. But as it turns out, I loved it. I loved business and finance and all of that. So I then went upon graduation to work at Goldman Sachs and, learned so much. I mean, just it's unfathomable how much I learned there. But realizing at the same time how much I missed the arts and being around, what I loved and had a passion for. So while I was there, I got my master's in arts administration. And now I find myself back in this world, which is, where I feel like I belong.
Yeah, what amazing story. I always find it so fascinating and interesting because I just know for myself to move to New York City at 15, whenever I hear dancers have done that, and some younger, some at 13 when they leave home, I know I could not have done that. I don't live far from the city, so when I started to take that, next level dance training and go into the city, I was older, but when I hear that, I just commend anyone who does that because I find it courageous, but I also find it, it's just so inspiring. And I point that out because I know there are a lot of dancers who are listening, who will listen to this and who perhaps are trying to make that decision or their parents are. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just, what that was like at such a young age and what that journey was like for you, leaving home and doing that.
Sure, I don't think it's necessary. I think
Mhm,
first of all, I will say that, and the world is very different and how things
mhm,
operate. But at that time, it felt very much like the trajectory that one
mhm,
needed to take if they wanted to pursue, a professional ballet career
mhm,
seriously. There are so many options now that I
mhm,
think the development of yourself as a person is equally, if not more important.
mhm,
And so I do think that is something really to think about and to consider. You know, it doesn't have to be either or, I don't
mhm,
think anymore. It's not, you must move when you're,
mhm.
a child,
Yeah.
to be taken seriously. Or you need to sort of step out of sort of a nurturing environment where you have your family and your
Mhm,
parents and your sisters and your brothers and all that. I think very much now you can do all of that, which is
mhm.
wonderful and I think really important. You only get to be a child once,
Once, yeah.
and it really sets you up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, and thank you for your honesty with that too. And you're correct. I agree with you that there are so many options now, and thank goodness there are because I know also my own experience too. There wasn't a lot even when I was growing up. There wasn't a lot in my area where now it's flooded. And but I think that speaks to the arts as well and to the art form, which is really exciting. So I think that's wonderful. And then to be handpicked, I think the talent, that is seen. I always love to hear stories when that teacher, that choreographer, that person that perhaps can hold the trajectory to your next part of your career sees that spark or that talent or that something inside. And it's always different for everybody. Um, were you surprised by that, excited by that when that happened, or all of the above? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I was certainly excited. I think when you're young, or at least when I was young, I might not have fully
Mhm,
comprehended, everything that was happening and what it meant. And I think in retrospect, when you look back on your life, you realize how special,
mhm,
certain moments were and how much they really meant, something to the development of your life and your career, speaking about dance and all of that. But when you're young, you're just sort of in the moment, and of
mhm,
course it's exciting, and you have your dreams, and you want to move in that direction, and it's sort of part of the joy, I think, of being a
mhm,
child and having that dream. And I know there are a lot of young people who dream of becoming a dancer, and I think that's really wonderful, and to hold on to that for as
yeah.
long as possible.
Yes, hold on to that. I like that you point that out, that joy. It's very true. And to keep that, it doesn't have to go away. There are the ups and downs, that's life, but to hold on to that, I think is what is so special. I found about dance, that the joy that it exudes and that it gives to people and offers to people. So I that's why I'm such a big advocate for it. I also want to talk a little bit about when it did come time for you to make the transition. I know for myself, when I was a couple years ago, when I had decided to close my studio, I had a dance studio for 23 years, and that was huge. And I had been thinking about that a few years prior. It was starting to percolate and think, and what next, or is this it? And and then making that decision was a huge process. While it might seem to to the people who you're not sharing that with, that it's sudden, you know what goes on all, with your inner circle and the people you're sharing that with to make that decision. What was making that decision like for you?
The transition from
Yeah,
being a
from
dancer
dancer
to figuring
yeah,
out
to
what to
your
do
next,
the rest of
yeah,
my
to what's
life.
next. Yeah.
Sure, as you say, it was years and years, decades in the making,
Hmm.
really, and it's not something that people are witnessing.
Hmm.
It's usually a sort of a private thing, dealing with just who you are. You start dance when you're so young, and it
Hmm.
becomes such a huge part of your identity, if not your entire identity,
Hmm.
almost. And so there's a lot of transitions going on, not just the factual transition of one career to the next, but also emotional transition and just identity transition. So it was tough. I will
Hmm.
say it was definitely tough, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I think some people sort of see the trajectory and think, oh, it just happened like that,
Hmm.
and it was not like that at
Hmm.
all. It took me a long time to figure it out, and I wouldn't have been able to make that transition without a support system.
Hmm.
So, I do think, and this ties back to, when you're a child and you're starting this, it's so important to have, whether it's your family or your friends or, whoever it is there to support you along the way. During transition
Hmm.
period, you're going to really need that. I
Yeah.
found. And so, fortunately, I had that. And outside perspectives as well,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yes.
when you're in the dance world, you can become very closed in
Yes.
your own insulated world, and not just dance. I think any
Hmm.
profession,
Sure.
when you go into it, you become so focused, and you sort of exist within that world.
Hmm.
So when it came time for that transition, getting outside perspectives was so important and so helpful, because
Hmm.
really, I was like, what is there in the world?
Yeah.
What do people do
Yeah. Yes, it's
outside of the
true.
dance world? And lo and behold, there's a whole wide world out there, and a
Yeah.
lot of really interesting people and things to do, and exploring. And so it's been challenging, but also
Hmm.
exciting, to
Yes.
discover new things and to discover that you're capable of new things,
Yes.
learning new things, growing and developing. I think that's really been an exciting part of it. I think, as a dancer, you're constantly looking for the challenge and pushing yourself to be the best that you can. And so this is, in many ways, a very similar thing, just, pushing yourself and looking how to be the best that you can be,
Yeah.
in new ways, which is
Yes, in
really
new
exciting.
ways. Yes,
Yes.
very true. I like that. So then you decide to go to school and for accounting, and you find you're liking that, and kudos to you for that, you know. But and talk about that. What was that? Was it like you're saying before? Was it the challenge? Was it something new and interesting? And what did you see yourself doing? Did you see yourself perhaps continuing in the dance world in some capacity, or did you think it's going to be a total different career path you're going to choose once you were finding that you were really enjoying, the accounting and that type of work?
I actually went into it without any answers,
Nice. Hmm.
or without knowing what I was going to do,
Hmm.
and I didn't, so the reason why I went and I selected accounting, I majored in accounting and minored in business communication, was my partner, who actually worked in finance,
Okay.
said, since you don't really know what you want to do, you should get an accounting degree, because with an accounting degree, you could work anywhere: small, medium, large company, for profit, nonprofit,
Okay.
New York,
Hmm.
somewhere around the
Hmm.
accounting is a universal language, and
Hmm.
literally every company needs someone who understands numbers and
Hmm.
accounting. So that's actually why I went in that
Hmm.
direction, and it wasn't really with any intention of going into this or that, but as it turned out, I really loved it. It was
Hmm.
so challenging, but it was working a different part of me than I'd
Hmm.
ever really, activated before. And then when you're in business school, you're surrounded by other business students, and,
Hmm.
getting really sort of caught up in I went to school in New York City. And so you have all the financial institutions here. And so just being surrounded and in that environment, it's, very similar to the dance world when you're around other like-minded people. I just sort of found myself going along that path where everybody wants to work at Goldman Sachs, and so I just found myself going along in that direction. And I really loved, learning and growing and moving in that way. And so it was exciting for me. But I didn't know, I didn't go into it knowing or having any answers.
Have a plan.
But I forced myself to take that step because I was a little paralyzed, before that, because I really didn't know which direction to go in it or what to do. And so just taking that step, not knowing if you're going to like it, not knowing what the end result is, not knowing why you're doing it, but just keep moving. Keep moving, keep taking a step, keep trying to figure out, what do you like? What don't you like? What are you good at? What aren't you good at? It was a big lesson for me in just keep moving.
Yeah, I think that's really wise advice. And the people who were encouraging you too, your support system and giving you that information, it's really important to have that. I just stress that for listeners too, that you want to have that support system and someone or people that you can go and talk to, because all different people have different opinions and they can aid, what next step you're trying to make, if you're trying to make a next step with something. I know myself, when you say that, even after I closed my studio, and one day I was like, it was during the pandemic, I was like, I think I'm just going to reach out to people, to dancers, and see if they want to talk. Like, I'm going to interview them. I'm just going to start and do it. And I never thought twice anybody would say no, and they really didn't. Like, people were like, yes. And I just thought, this is great. And so I only point that out because you're saying the same thing, just try it. You're either going to do it, like it, fail at it, or be good at it, get better at it, so you're just not going to know unless you try, is the point I want to make. And so I also want to talk about, you then have your job at Goldman Sachs. Was it then that I read that you had also then went on for a master's in arts administration? What started you to think about going that route as well?
That is correct. So while I was at Goldman, I went and got my master's in arts administration. And really what prompted me in that was, I think dancers by nature sort of have this discipline and this way of working that you become completely focused and absorbed in what you are tasked with. And so when I started working at Goldman, that became my world entirely, right? And it became my focus, and I wanted to be the best that I could be at it. And so it left me no room for my past life. I wasn't seeing people that I knew, from my past life. I wasn't going to performances. It just, everything that I knew and had lived up until that time sort of, went to the background. And I realized how much I missed it and how much, those people were important to me, and the things that I had spent my whole life, a part of, were really important to me. So, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, well, I love business and finance, but I also love the arts, and I miss, all of that. Why not put those together, and it sounds funny now because, most people would be like, well, of course, but I really hadn't, that was not the path that I went out on, and I really didn't put the two together until I sort of found myself in that situation.
Wow. And, when you were doing all that, did it leave any room? Were you still able to take class? Were you doing anything like that for yourself, or you were really completely removed from it? Yeah. So that is huge to be removed like that. That is like, it's two different, it's like before and after almost. So it's a really wonderful thing. You've been able to really merge the two like that. And so then how did that start to happen? That then what was the next step after that after Goldman Sachs? Where did you go from there?
I went to Mark Morris Dance Group, and I was their finance manager. And then, starting to sort of reintegrate myself in the arts, landscape. And again, trying things out, like what do I like, what am I good at? So went there, I had worked with Mark a lot when I was a dancer.
Okay.
Loved his company, love him, so that was really wonderful to be able to go there and work for him and see that side of an arts organization. Then I moved on to New York City Center and worked in programming. So I was starting to get some experience in all the different departments of an arts organization. And actually, I should mention, before I went to college, I actually started my own dance company, which I ran for almost 6 years.
Okay.
So it was a small company that I started with a friend of mine, and we ran it together. And it was for mature dancers, and we commissioned all brand new works. And so that also actually prompted me to go to college, because I really enjoyed having a company, but I knew absolutely nothing about how to run it.
Right, how to run it, yeah.
My only experience was that I had been a dancer, and I do think a little bit there's a mentality of like, oh, I was a dancer, I can be a something, a teacher or a director or a choreographer, and it doesn't always translate. Maybe somebody has a natural talent for it, but I think definitely going to school and actually getting the education, it's a world of difference.
Yes, it is. And it just brings to mind, when I had my dance studio too, because I wore so many hats. When I first started it, I was teaching everything and doing all the finance and all that. And then I learned as I went along, and I didn't go get an arts administration degree. I had a completely different degree that was totally unrelated to dance studio ownership, but you do learn along the way. And then I just love learning anyway. And I love that you say that too, and that you promote that, because it's important. If you don't know something, it's important to ask and to learn about it. So then how do you find yourself here? Tell the listeners how you find yourself here at Baryshnikov Arts. And then we're going to get into all what their programming is.
Sure. So right before I came here, I was the executive director of another arts center that was located in upstate New York called Kotzebue. And I took over that organization, which had been in existence for about 30 years, right before the pandemic, the year before the pandemic. Okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's 153 acres right on the Hudson River. And it was just waiting to blossom, right? And it was really exciting. And then the pandemic hit, and we were really fortunate that, the group of people that I was working with, we really understood the situation we were in together, and really worked together to do something in a time that was extremely challenging, worldwide for the arts and for everybody. So we actually moved all of our programming outdoors. So we never shut down, and it was actually a period of growth for the organization. And because everything else was shut down and we were the only place that was open, it garnered a lot of attention. And one of those people was Mikhail Baryshnikov, and of course I knew him, I had been in his school, and he had hired me into ABT, and I had danced with him in White Oak Dance Project. And I invited him up to, some of the festivals that we had. And, so we sort of reunited in a way. And so when the time came when Baryshnikov Arts was looking for a new executive director, I applied for the position, and I find myself here now. So it's like I said, it's been a wonderful sort of coming back home feeling.
Yeah, which is really exciting. And you have these two roles, so executive director and president. Can you talk about a little bit of both of them? What the difference is, and then how they, complement each other for the organization.
Sure. So it's not a huge difference. It's just that now I sit on the board, so president of the board, but executive director, overseeing the operations of the organization.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Baryshnikov Arts and what's going on there now.
So Baryshnikov Arts was founded by Mikhail Baryshnikov 19 years ago. So next year will be our 20th anniversary, which is very exciting. He is the artistic director, and he's quite involved, which is, I think people are surprised, but, when we have artists here and, he's walking through the hallways and in our office. The primary mission of Baryshnikov Arts is to support artists in the creative process. So our residency program is a really big program for us. The way it sort of unfolded last year and this year, we have about 20 artists that we support throughout the year. We provide them space, we provide them a stipend, marketing assets, whatever it takes for an artist to be able to create and then also be able to develop as a
like a residency, almost like a residency.
Correct. So it's a residency program. Exactly. So we actually just launched the application platform for 2025. So anybody that's interested should apply. It's an open application, so anybody can apply for that. So yes, it's a residency program. We give them space, we support them in their endeavors, and we allow them to have, a showing if they would like. And it's a really wonderful opportunity for them to get their work in front of Misha, because he watches, all the showings, and he just loves, having the artists in the studios. And then we also have a presentation part of the organization. So we oftentimes commission brand new pieces, present performances. Similarly, we have a spring and a fall season. And as of this year, we started also a summer festival, which we will repeat again in our second year for next year.
Very nice.
But something that, many people are surprised about if they don't follow us closely is that they assume Baryshnikov, we're a ballet company, or we just do ballet, which is actually pretty far from what we actually do. We're not a ballet company. We are a facility. We have 4 beautiful studios and a gorgeous studio, theater, the Jerome Robbins Theater. And we support all artistic disciplines. So dance, for sure, is a big part of our programming. More modern dance than classical ballet, but we also support music of all genres, theater, film. We have a wonderful film about Misha's relationship and friendship with Merce Cunningham, so that will be really exciting. So yeah, it's residencies, it's performances, a lot of commissions. We also do rentals. So we do subsidized rentals for artists alongside other type of rentals. We have a beautiful space. Misha found this building and created this incredible space for artists way back when it was Hell's Kitchen and not an area that very many people wanted to visit. Now we are really smack in the middle of Hudson Yards, right across the street, we have Hudson Yards. So it's really blossoming as a neighborhood. And so that is providing us a lot of new opportunities.
I love the fact too that it's all artistic genres, because I think, that's what we need, right? We need as a society. And just as people, we're drawn to art for so many reasons and so many different kinds of art. And I want to talk about that too, the artistic vision, not only of Baryshnikov Arts, but you as an artist, what have you seen through your years as an artist, and what are your hopes for not only the dance world, but for the world of arts as it is today and beyond?
I've always found very exciting collaboration between artistic disciplines. And I think that's also very much a reflection of Misha. If you look at his career, he's known obviously for his, being a dancer, but he really is the one who sort of broke the barriers of a ballet dancer, collaborating with all sorts of artists, and how many different artists were so interested in working with him. And I think you'll see that now many dancers are finding that collaborating with people at the highest level, outside of your respective field is really exciting, and also opens up so many new ideas and possibilities. So I think that's, one of the themes that runs through our organization is trying to allow artists to innovate and find new creative paths. And a lot of that can happen between collaborations with artists outside of their, typical realm. for myself, I also find that extremely exciting. So, as you say, throughout, the trajectory of my own career, I think some of the choreographers and dance works that I've seen that I've enjoyed the most are the ones that are bringing in collaborators from other artistic disciplines. So it's sort of multidisciplinary now, is becoming more popular, but it's very much sort of what we do at Baryshnikov Arts is encourage that.
Yes, and I think too, just to springboard a little bit off of that is, modern. When I was dancing and dancing with a modern company, modern was like it was either ballet or modern. There wasn't the melding of the two. There was almost like a real disconnect, or there was a disconnect between the two, even though you were encouraged and needed the ballet technique for modern, but there just wasn't the collaboration, like you say. And I find it exciting too. And of course, we all have our own tastes. We're going to like something or not like something more, perhaps, be drawn to one or the other. But I do find it exciting that artists are exploring and the worlds are melding. I just think it represents who we are too, and where we are, just as people, that we're trying to come together and bridge those gaps and communicate and learn from each other, whether it's culturally, socially, artistically. And I find art is the place where that happens so organically. I think that's what art is about. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that, not agree with that, or have anything to add to that?
I think if you look at history, artists have always been the sort of the leaders pushing us forward in many ways. And I think that having artists that want to look for new creative ways, that's sort of a natural step forward. And I think it's very exciting for artists when they get together, with other artists to create together. As you mentioned, you spoke earlier, we have a group coming in November, and it's a group that have come together from very different worlds. We have beatboxers with classical musicians who are playing in a way you would never expect classical musicians to play, with dancers, and the outcome is just so very different than if you had each of those three separately, just doing their staying within sort of their own, category and playing. I think also, as you mentioned, as a reflection of society, we're trying to remove borders, we're trying to remove silos, and that's allowing us to engage with others in a way that maybe we would not have thought of before. But again, it's pushing us forward all together and discovering new things.
Yeah. There, it brings to mind, I can't recall the artist I was speaking with, but there was I think it was a dancer or a choreographer. I can't remember right now, but they were talking about when they were in the classroom. They were the person that was always looking out the window, always looking out the window. And they just knew that they needed to be out of that studio looking and learning and creating. And this is what this reminds me of, because there's so much valuable information out there, and valuable people, and valuable stories to be told, which I find exciting. So you said that the season opens with the film, and then what comes after that? Is it the beatboxing and all that, or what? Is there something in between?
In between the Merce Misha film and the beatboxing, we commissioned a new piece. I'm very, it's going to be, I think, really wonderful. A new piece that's based on Patti Smith's first book that she wrote, Wool Gathering.
Oh.
So directed and composed by Oliver Tompkins Ray. The choreography is by John Higginbotham. And Patti Smith is the featured artist.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, so there's a lot.
Again, bringing together, sort of different art forms and putting it together to create something brand new. And, we're all looking forward to to
Yeah,
see.
and I think it too, I think it offers for the audience, young and old, and the artist, that there's life beyond what they thought might have been the end of their career, right? There's still life and creativity there. It doesn't mean you reach, especially nowadays, you don't reach a certain age and you don't have to, unless you really want to say, I'm, finished with the art world. I really want to do something completely different. There's still so much available. You might not be able to move the same way, but there's so much more creativity in people, and to offer that kind of space, I think is really, really exciting. As the executive director, and you're in charge of all operations, what is the future looking like for Baryshnikov Arts, and what's the hope for the future for the organization?
Well, the short-term future, we're focused on next year, which is our 20th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So some surprises coming that
Yep.
share soon. And then, of course, long term, we look to how the company will develop and grow, and Misha's legacy. So we have a lot of different things that we are working on, that we will be unrolling.
Nice. That's yeah. No, it's very exciting. I'm excited to keep an eye on what's happening there. I just wanted to ask you a couple of things. Throughout your career, and here you are now. What's the thing? It can be, it can be from something in your past, could be from something now. What's the thing that you feel you're most proud of, that you've done all these years in your careers?
I think from a professional standpoint, the thing I'm most proud of was taking that step, going to school and starting something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
You know, generally speaking, when you follow the path to become a professional dancer, it starts really young,
Mm-hmm.
almost before you're really thinking about, oh, I want to be a professional. You start young, it's a passion, it's a joy, you just love doing it. And then you find yourself, sort of on this path towards becoming a professional. And, hopefully you maintain that sense of joy, but it also becomes, a career and a job, and it sort
Mm-hmm.
of evolves into something else. But when you get to that place in your career, when you realize everything that you have devoted your life to up to that point might change now. Um, that was sort of a eye opener for me, and a little bit scary, and a little bit just sort of um, you know out of the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that sort of unknown step, um, it's an enormous effort. There's a financial
Mm-hmm.
part, that's associated, and you don't know what the outcome is. But it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think I am most proud of having taken that step and really like giving it my all, and then letting myself go with where that sort of took me, even though it was something I'd never in my life expected or thought would be, the path that I would take.
Yeah, that's nice. And how about, what are you now most excited for?
I am very excited to sort of, move forward and see how Baryshnikov Arts evolves, and what I can contribute to that, as I continue myself to develop as an executive director and working with Misha. And, our organization now is such a wonderful group of people, and we're all working really hard together, and everybody's, contributing their experience and their expertise. And it's very enjoyable working together, with people that have the same focus and mission and goals, all
Yeah.
together. It's really a wonderful
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. And how about, what are you most inspired by? It sounds like you might be that, but what are you most inspired by?
I think I'm most inspired by people who are doing what they believe in, aren't compromising their values, um, know how to work well with people, and treat people the way they would want to be treated. but have, something bigger than themselves that they are, striving for, and working collaboratively with others to achieve that goal. It's a nice place to be in.
Yeah, no, that is inspiring. Is there anything that I haven't spoken about, or anything you want to let the listeners know, or let them hear about, that we haven't covered or talked about?
I I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. I'm sure, afterwards we'll
Oh
be
yeah.
like, oh no, we
Oh
missed
no,
that.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
but no, this was really nice. Thank you. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
taking time to talk to me.
No, absolutely. It's very inspiring. I find it inspiring to talk to my guests, but it's very inspiring, when I talk to a guest who is willing to offer, themselves, and to talk about, the highs and lows, or and to offer to the listeners, words of wisdom, or their advice. And the fact that you talk about, being most proud of making that decision to go to school, to make that change and go to school and do that. I think it's inspiring, and I think and I hope that there is somebody listening who is at that, that precipice, they're at that crossroads, and they're trying to decide, and maybe this will in some way help them, make that decision, either yes or no. Just to know, just to take, sometimes we just have to take those leaps of faith. And
Yeah, I
right.
mean, and it doesn't have to be school, of course, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's not being afraid to take what others might think is a risk.
Hmm.
Because in many ways, there's no such thing as failure.
Yeah.
You just try and you try again. And we have just one life to really give it our all. And I do think that, you know, you have to try and see what's out there for you. And you might not know what that is. And oftentimes, it just takes that willingness to step outside of your comfort zone, to take, the risk,
Yeah.
because you just don't know what might come of it. And you learn so much about yourself along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you for joining me on Dance Talk with Joanne Carey. Everybody, this is Dance Talk with Joanne Carey. Follow us, like us, and share, share, share. Thank you, everybody.
Powered by Riverside.